The galaxy was quiet, too quiet. Across the vast reaches of space, the planets of the quadrant lived in a fragile peace, their alliances held together by a delicate thread. But for the people of Zora 7, a small but thriving colony on the edge of the Orion Belt, that peace was about to be shattered. Zora 7 was a planet known for its beauty and its calm. It was a place untouched by the violence of galactic wars, where its people focused on science, exploration, and living in harmony with their environment. The population was small but rich in knowledge, with scientists and engineers who pushed the boundaries of discovery. They had long since made contact with other peaceful species and were even known for their vast libraries and cutting-edge research on sustainable energy. But despite the peaceful nature of Zora 7's inhabitants, the galaxy was not as safe as it seemed. The Threx, a race of merciless warriors, had been quietly observing the planet for years. The Threx were notorious for their brutal conquests, wiping out entire civilizations to expand their empire. Their reputation had spread like wildfire, striking fear into every corner of the galaxy. Zora 7, despite its peaceful existence, was now on their radar. The Threx saw the planet as an opportunity to claim new territory, and they had no intention of negotiating peace. It began with a single eerie signal, a massive fleet of Threx warships appearing from the darkness of space without warning. The people of Zora 7 watched in horror as their once calm skies filled with enemy vessels. They had no army, no defense, and no way to fight back. The colonists knew they were doomed. In their panic, Zora 7's leaders scrambled for a solution. They tried to reach out to their allies, but there were no immediate responses. The nearest systems were too far away to help in time. The Threx had already begun their assault, and the colony's defenses were quickly overwhelmed. Buildings crumbled beneath the weight of Threx bombardments, and the air was filled with the sound of explosions as cities fell. The leaders of Zora 7 did the only thing they could think of. They sent a distress signal, a desperate cry for help. It wasn't just a call for aid. It was a plea, a last-ditch effort to save their people. The signal was broadcast across the stars, echoing through the cosmos. It was short, a single sentence repeated over and over. "We are under attack. We need help. Please, save us." They knew that their chances were slim. The Threx had already made their presence known in the galaxy, and they were feared by all. There were whispers of humanity, humans who had once ruled vast swaths of space, but that was a long time ago. Some said they were extinct, their once mighty fleets lost to the ages. Others said humanity had disappeared into obscurity, leaving only a memory behind. But for the people of Zora 7, the thought of humans was a distant hope. They had nothing left to lose, so they clung to that hope, no matter how faint. As the Threx pressed their assault, the planet's atmosphere shimmered with the aftermath of bombings. Cities that had once been bustling hubs of research and culture were now nothing more than ruins. People fled to shelters, but many were caught in the chaos. It was a nightmare made worse by the realization that no one was coming. They were alone. Back on the surface, Zora 7's leaders sat in silence, watching the images of destruction unfold on their screens. The alien ships had no mercy. The Threx were ruthless, destroying everything in their path, capturing any survivors to use as slaves or subjects for their twisted experiments. In the face of such overwhelming power, the inhabitants of Zora 7 had no choice but to wait for their inevitable end. But just as the last of their hope began to fade, something unexpected happened. A new signal, faint at first, broke through the chaos. The leaders of Zora 7 turned their eyes to the screens once more. It wasn't the Threx, but a new message, one that gave them a glimmer of hope. The message was short, but its meaning was clear. "We are Earth. Prepare for assistance." The words sent a ripple of disbelief through the room. Earth? Could it really be? Humanity? After all this time? No one had heard from them in centuries. And now, out of nowhere, a fleet was on its way. The thought seemed impossible, but the signal was real. It was coming from the direction of the Threx fleet, which was still attacking. The Threx had no idea what was heading toward them. The people of Zora 7 didn't know either, but they couldn't afford to waste time wondering. Within moments, the first Earth warships arrived in Zora 7's orbit. Their ships were massive, their hulls dark and seemingly impenetrable. The sight of these colossal ships, each bristling with weapons and shields far beyond anything the Threx had ever seen, caused a ripple of fear among the Threx commanders. They had no knowledge of Earth's power, only its history, if it was even true. But they had no time to wonder about it. The Threx fleet, already stretched thin, now had to face a new and terrifying force. As the Earth ships moved into position, the Threx leader, Commander Tuller, gripped his chair in frustration. He had underestimated the planet. The humans' arrival wasn't just a fluke, it was calculated. The Earth ships aligned themselves in a defensive formation around Zora 7, shielding the planet from further assault. The Earth fleet's weapons came online, glowing with deadly energy. They were ready for war, and they were not going to back down. On Zora 7's surface, the survivors watched in awe as the Earth ships prepared to strike. For the first time in days, they felt a spark of hope. These warships, designed for war, had arrived just in time to defend their world. The Threx were powerful, but they were not prepared for what was about to come. In the distance, the Threx commander barked orders, his anger rising. Destroy them. Show them no mercy. But the Earth ships did not hesitate. They were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the Threx had encountered. The battle began with a roar of energy as the Earth fleet opened fire, their weapons cutting through the Threx ships like a hot knife through butter. The Threx ships tried to retaliate, but their weapons were no match for the Earth ship shields. The sky lit up with the flashes of battle, and the people of Zora 7 held their breath, watching as their planet was saved before their eyes. As the Earth warships pummeled the Threx fleet, one ship broke off from the main group, a massive dreadnought that had been the center of the Threx attack. It charged toward the Earth flagship with all the force of its remaining power, but the humans were ready. The Earth flagship unleashed a massive barrage of fire, sending the Threx dreadnought into a spiral of flames and explosions. The Threx were falling back. Their ships were being destroyed one by one, and their once immense fleet was now in retreat. The people of Zora 7 could hardly believe what they were seeing. After so much destruction, after so much fear, they had finally been saved. The Earth fleet had arrived, and with no mercy, they had wiped out the Threx. The battle was not over, but for the people of Zora 7, it was a victory they would never forget. The long-lost legend of humanity had returned, and they had brought their wrath with them. And as the final Threx ship fled into the distance, the leader of Zora 7 looked to the stars and whispered, "The humans have come. They are real, and they are unstoppable." The Earth fleet's arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter for Zora 7. As the last of the Threx ships retreated into the cold void of space, the survivors on the planet slowly began to breathe again. The immediate threat had been eliminated, but the question on everyone's mind was, what now? The Earth fleet remained in orbit above Zora 7, its ships massive and imposing. Their weapons, still glowing from the recent battle, were now silent, but their presence was a constant reminder of the strength that had just saved the planet. For the inhabitants of Zora 7, the sudden appearance of humanity, after so many years of uncertainty, was nothing short of a miracle. Zora 7's leaders quickly gathered in the command center, their minds racing with questions. Who were these people? Why had they come now? Was Earth truly back, or was this a fleeting chance encounter? The reality that a fleet of Earth warships had just appeared from the depths of space, destroying an overwhelming force of Threx, was beyond comprehension. Yet it was undeniable. They had witnessed it with their own eyes. As the communication lines to the Earth fleet opened, Admiral Helena Reyes, the commanding officer of the human forces, appeared on the screen. She was calm, her voice steady and commanding, but there was an unmistakable resolve in her eyes. "This is Admiral Reyes, commanding the Earth Fleet," she said, her tone professional but laced with authority. "Zara 7, you are under our protection now. The Threx threat has been neutralized, but I suggest you remain on high alert. There may be more of them out there, and we need to prepare for any future engagements." Her words, while reassuring, also carried an air of caution. The war was far from over. The Threx might have been pushed back for now, but the galaxy was vast, and there were many other threats that humanity knew all too well. The people of Zara 7 had been saved by Earth's superior technology, but they were now tied to Earth in ways they could not yet fully understand. The survivors of Zara 7, still in shock, tried to comprehend what had just happened. Many of them were scientists, explorers, and diplomats, people who had spent their lives studying the stars and the history of the galaxy. They had learned about Earth through ancient records, tales of a powerful human civilization that had once ruled over vast territories, only to mysteriously vanish. The concept of humanity seemed almost like a legend, a story told to inspire hope in dark times. Now, standing before them, was proof that the stories were true. While the leaders of Zara 7 processed Admiral Rice's words, the rest of the population remained in awe. They gathered in small groups, whispering to each other, discussing the implications of the Earth fleet's arrival. For years, they had been defenseless, living in the shadow of the Threx threat. And now, without warning, they were thrust into a reality where humanity had come to their rescue. But how much longer would the humans stay? What did they want in return for their help? Admiral Reyes, sensing the uncertainty among the Zara 7 leaders, continued speaking. "We know your people have been through a lot. We will give you time to recover and assist in any way we can. But our mission here is far from over. The Threx were only the beginning. We've been monitoring this quadrant for years, and we know that darker forces are moving in the shadows. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and humanity is now ready to stand guard. You're not alone anymore." As the transmission ended, silence filled the room. Zara 7's leaders were left to process the enormity of the situation. The Earth fleet had not only defeated an enemy they couldn't even hope to fight against, but they had also declared their presence on the galactic stage. This was no mere rescue mission. Humanity had come back to the galaxy to reclaim its place among the stars. The question, however, was whether they would accept Zara 7 as an ally, or if they would demand something more in return. In the coming days, the Earth fleet began to establish a base of operations on Zara 7's moon. The inhabitants, still recovering from the devastation of the Threx attack, were eager to rebuild. Earth's advanced technology was made available to them, and the humans helped restore communication systems, repair infrastructure, and rebuild the cities that had been reduced to rubble. But as the Earth ships lingered above Zara 7, the rest of the galaxy began to take notice. The Threx were not known for retreating easily. They would regroup, and it was only a matter of time before they came back with reinforcements. Zara 7 was safe for now, but the Earth fleet's presence sent a clear message to all who were watching. Humanity had returned, and they were not to be underestimated. Meanwhile, aboard one of Earth's flagship warships, Admiral Rice sat in her private quarters, contemplating the next steps. Her mind raced as she reviewed the data from the Threx battle. It had been a victory, yes, but it was only a small part of a much larger picture. Earth had long been preparing for the re-emergence of threats like the Threx, but there were still so many unknowns. Who else was out there? What were the Threx truly after? And why had humanity disappeared all those years ago? The answers to those questions were locked away in the forgotten corners of the galaxy, but Admiral Rice was determined to find them. She could not afford to let the Threx or anyone else threaten the fragile peace that had been established. As she stared out at the stars through her ship's viewing window, Admiral Rice made a promise to herself. Humanity would no longer stand idly by, waiting for destruction to strike. Earth's fleet would be a beacon of hope for the galaxy, and they would ensure that no more innocent lives would be lost to the cruelty of the Threx or any other force that sought to dominate the stars. Back on Zora 7, life was slowly returning to normal. The Threx might have been defeated, but the shadow of their presence still loomed over the planet. The people were grateful for the Earth fleet's help, but they also understood that their future was now tied to the humans. The people of Zora 7 had always been isolated, relying on their own technology and resources to survive. Now, they were a part of something much larger. But no one, not even the people of Zora 7, could predict the challenges that lay ahead. Humanity had returned, but with that return came a new set of responsibilities, alliances, and enemies. The galaxy was changing, and the actions of the Earth fleet would shape the future in ways no one could foresee. The Threx had learned a harsh lesson: never underestimate humanity. The question now was, who else would? As the weeks passed since the Earth fleet's arrival, the people of Zora 7 started to adjust to their new reality. The warships remained in orbit, their colossal forms an ever-present reminder of the power humanity had brought with them. While Zora 7's inhabitants were thankful for their protection, they couldn't shake the feeling that things had changed irrevocably. The peaceful planet they had once known was now a part of something much bigger, and it was hard to predict how this would all unfold. On the surface, efforts to rebuild were progressing swiftly, aided by Earth's advanced technology. The human engineers worked side by side with Zora 7 scientists, and it wasn't long before the planet's cities began to show signs of life again. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was hope. Earth's ships provided not only military protection, but also vital resources and knowledge. But as the humans continued their rebuilding efforts, something began to stir beneath the surface of Zora 7. The first signs of the growing tension appeared in the form of whispers. The people of Zora 7 began to ask questions about Earth's long disappearance and their sudden re-emergence. Why had humanity gone silent for centuries? Why hadn't they come to the aid of other planets that had fallen to the Threx or other hostile species? Was there more to Earth's return than a simple act of mercy? Zora 7's leaders were among the first to express their unease. They had spent so many years relying on themselves, surviving on their own strength and ingenuity. Now, they were dependent on the Earth fleet for their security. Though they had been saved from the Threx, they could not help but wonder what Earth wanted in return. Admiral Reyes, however, remained calm in the face of these growing concerns. She understood the hesitation. The people of Zora 7 had been left to fend for themselves for so long, and suddenly, here was a power, a force, that they could not fully comprehend. To them, Earth's fleet might have seemed like a blessing, but also a potential threat, and Admiral Reyes couldn't fault them for feeling that way. One evening, as the Earth ships continued their wash over the planet, a message arrived from one of the neighboring systems. It was a distress signal, an urgent one. The Threx were regrouping, assembling a new fleet that was far larger and more dangerous than before. Their defeat at Zora 7 had not broken their spirit. If anything, it had made them more determined to destroy the planet and anything associated with it. The message warned that the Threx would be coming for the Earth fleet, and they would be coming soon. Admiral Reyes gathered her officers to discuss the situation. They had anticipated this, of course. The Threx were nothing if not relentless, but the sheer scale of their new fleet was unsettling. It was one thing to fight a single battle. It was another thing entirely to fight a war on multiple fronts. "We don't have the luxury of waiting," Admiral Reyes said, her voice low but determined. "We need to strike first, before the Threx can gather their forces. If we give them time to regroup, we may not have the advantage we do now." Her officers agreed, and the decision was made. The Earth fleet would launch a preemptive strike on the Threx. They would hunt down the new fleet before it could become a real threat. It was a risky move, but one that Earth's commanders knew had to be done. Meanwhile, on Zora 7, the inhabitants were faced with the reality of the situation. The Earth fleet had saved them, but now they were caught in the middle of a galactic struggle. The people of Zara 7 had no choice but to trust the humans once again. But as the countdown to the strike began, the unease among Zara 7's leaders deepened. They had been thrust into a conflict that was not of their making, and they had no say in how it would play out. A final briefing was held between Admiral Rice and the leaders of Zara 7. The humans had made it clear that they would do whatever it took to protect the planet. But the Zara 7 officials could sense that this wasn't just a fight for their survival. It was a fight for something larger. Earth was positioning itself as a power in the galaxy, and Zara 7 was now its ally. "We understand your fear," Admiral Rice said, her gaze steady as she addressed the Council of Leaders. "But make no mistake, this is a fight that we have to win. The threats are not just a threat to Zara 7. They are a threat to the entire quadrant. If we allow them to grow stronger, they will come for every peaceful planet, and we can't let that happen." The Zara 7 leaders exchanged looks. They had known the threats were dangerous, but they had never faced such a threat on their own soil. Still, they had no choice but to agree. They had to trust the humans, even if they didn't fully understand their motivations. As the Earth fleet prepared for the strike, the people of Zara 7 held their breath. The next few hours would determine whether their peaceful world would survive the chaos of the galactic wars. They knew Earth was powerful, but they also knew the threats were ruthless. No one could predict what the outcome would be, but one thing was certain. Zara 7 had been thrust into the heart of a galaxy at war, and there was no turning back. The Earth fleet launched its assault just as the Threx fleet arrived in the system. The two forces collided in the depths of space, a battle unlike any other Zara 7's people had ever witnessed. The skies above the planet were filled with the flash of weapons, the roar of explosions, and the sound of ships tearing through the void. The battle raged for hours, with Earth's fleet pushing back the Threx at every turn. For the people of Zara 7, watching from their shattered cities below, it felt like a dream. The Earth warships moved with precision, their weapons cutting through the Threx ships like a hot knife through butter. The Threx fought back with ferocity, but they were no match for Earth's superior technology. Finally, after hours of intense fighting, the Earth fleet achieved victory once again. The Threx were forced to retreat, their fleet broken and scattered. The warships of Earth had delivered a decisive blow, but the cost of victory was clear. The Threx would not be easily defeated, and the conflict was far from over. As the smoke of battle cleared, Admiral Rice contacted Zara 7's leaders. "We've won for now," she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "But this is just the beginning. The Threx will regroup, and we must be ready." For the people of Zara 7, it was a moment of relief, but also a sobering realization. Earth had saved them, but they had also brought them into a larger conflict. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and there were many more challenges ahead. Zara 7 was no longer just a peaceful world. It was now a part of the galaxy's ongoing struggle for survival. The aftermath of the battle left Zara 7 in a state of uneasy peace. The people watched in awe as Earth's fleet surveyed the remnants of the destroyed Threx ships drifting in space, their engines cold and silent. Despite the victory, no one was under any illusion that the Threx were gone for good. The battle had been hard-fought, but the galaxy was vast, and their enemies were far from finished. It was a fragile peace, one that could shatter at any moment. On Zara 7, the days that followed were filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety. The planet had been spared for now, but the reality of being tied to Earth's war effort was beginning to settle in. The planet's leaders were torn between gratitude and uncertainty. Earth had delivered them from the brink of destruction, but they were now indebted to the humans. Would Earth's protection come with conditions? Would they be expected to fight alongside Earth in future conflicts? And what of the Threx? Would they truly leave Zara 7 alone, or was this just the beginning? Admiral Rice, for her part, understood the weight of the questions pressing down on the minds of Zara 7's leaders. The Threx had been routed for the moment, but she knew the larger threat still loomed. Earth had made its position clear. The fight against the Threx was far from over, and they would not stop until the enemy was eradicated from the galaxy. But she had no intention of forcing Zara 7 into anything they weren't ready for. They had their own fight to fight. Still, Earth's presence would mean their involvement in the larger galactic war, whether they were ready or not. "We will respect your sovereignty," Admiral Rice had said in her last communication with Zara 7's council. "But we cannot fight this war alone. The Threx are not the only threat. We need allies, and the galaxy needs to know that humanity stands ready to defend it. The question is, will you stand with us?" The question was a difficult one for the leaders of Zara 7. While they knew the Threx were an overwhelming threat, they also understood the complexity of war. The people of Zara 7 had never been involved in anything like this. They were peaceful, diplomatic, and had always relied on their scientific advancements rather than military might. Joining Earth in its war against the Threx was not a decision they could make lightly. Zara 7's council convened for days, discussing their options. They knew they could not remain neutral for long. Already, rumors spread across the galaxy about the rise of new enemies, factions that had seen Earth's strength and sought to challenge it. Even the Threx, broken as they were, had connections to darker forces in the galaxy, but no one knew just how far those forces reached. Finally, after much deliberation, the leaders of Zara 7 agreed to a delicate compromise. They would offer their support to Earth's war effort, but only to a limited extent. Zara 7's military would be trained by Earth's forces, but they would not be expected to fight in every battle. Instead, they would focus on defending their home, protecting their world and their people from further Threx incursions. It was a cautious decision, but it was the only one they felt they could make. They would stand with humanity, but they would do so on their terms. As news of this decision spread, a sense of unity began to emerge among the people of Zara 7. They had been saved by Earth, and now they were being asked to help protect their own future. The people who had once been afraid of Earth's arrival now looked to humanity as a beacon of hope. They understood that Earth's fight was their fight, and they would not back down from the challenges ahead. In the meantime, Admiral Rice and her fleet made preparations for the next phase of their campaign. The Threx might have retreated for now, but Earth's fleet was already on the move, ready to track down the scattered remnants of the enemy's forces. Their next target was a Threx stronghold on the edge of the galaxy, a place that had been rumored to be the source of their fleet's power. Earth had already gathered intelligence that suggested the Threx were regrouping, building a new, larger fleet, and this time, they wouldn't be caught off guard. The mission was clear: destroy the Threx stronghold and cripple their ability to wage war on the galaxy. It would be a dangerous operation, one that would require every ship in Earth's fleet, and possibly the assistance of Zara 7's forces as well. Earth's warships began to mobilize, the sound of engines roaring to life filling the command decks. The stakes were higher than ever, and there was no room for error. On Zara 7, the preparations for war were just beginning. Earth's military officers began training Zara 7 soldiers, teaching them the basics of combat, tactics, and survival. The people of Zara 7 were quick learners, eager to defend their world from any threat. They knew that Earth's experience in battle would help them, but they also had unique knowledge of their own planet and the surrounding regions, which would prove invaluable. But not all was as it seemed. As Earth's fleet mobilized for the assault on the Threx stronghold, there was an undercurrent of uncertainty. What if the Threx were not the only threat they would face? What if there were other factions in the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to strike? The galaxy was changing, and the line between friend and foe was becoming increasingly blurred. Admiral Rice herself was not blind to this uncertainty. She had witnessed firsthand the chaos and destruction the Threx were capable of, but she also knew that other threats lurked in the shadows. Earth's return to the galaxy had stirred something ancient and dangerous. She couldn't shake the feeling that the real fight was yet to come. As Earth's warships prepared for the assault, Admiral Rice stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at the stars. The galaxy stretched before her, vast and unknown, and she knew that the future of both Earth and Zora 7 depended on the decisions they made in the coming days. "We've won this round," she muttered to herself, "but the real battle is yet to come." The silence of space seemed to echo her thoughts. The Threx might have been defeated for now, but the forces arrayed against them were only beginning to reveal themselves. The galaxy was about to enter a new age of conflict, an age where humanity and its allies would stand as the last line of defense. As Earth's fleet prepared for their next decisive mission, the tension across the galaxy was palpable. The Threx stronghold they were targeting had been identified as a fortress of immense power, a place where the Threx had been building their new fleet. It was no longer just about defeating an enemy. It was about ensuring that the galaxy would not fall under the shadow of the Threx or any other rising powers that sought to dominate. The mission to destroy the stronghold had become a symbol, not just for Earth, but for all of humanity and their newfound allies in the galaxy. Zara 7 had agreed to provide limited support, training its military alongside Earth's troops. The people of Zara 7, who had once lived in peaceful isolation, were now preparing for war in ways they never imagined. The reality was sobering. In the past, their greatest conflict had been with themselves. Disagreements over resources, differing opinions on planetary governance. Now they were facing an enemy with the power to wipe out entire worlds. But the people of Zara 7 had found strength in unity. They were not alone anymore. Admiral Reyes stood at the helm of her flagship, the Vanguard, her eyes focused on the cold expanse of space. The star maps in front of her flickered, outlining the trajectory of the Earth fleet and the target coordinates of the Threx stronghold. She could feel the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. The coming battle would be one of the most critical in the galaxy's history. Failure was not an option. Not for Earth, and not for the people of Zara 7, who had placed their trust in her and her fleet. "The Threx will be expecting us," she murmured to her officer. "But they won't expect what's coming next." The fleet was now ready. Every ship had been fully equipped, every crew member had been trained, and every strategy discussed and rehearsed. The operation to strike the Threx stronghold was set into motion. As Earth's warships began their approach, Admiral Reyes knew they were walking a fine line. The Threx were not only brutal but cunning, and they would fight with everything they had. On Zara 7, the air was thick with anticipation. The people had seen the Earth fleet's power firsthand. The Threx might have been defeated, but the people of Zara 7 knew that this was only the beginning of something much larger. The threat was far from gone. Now, as the day of reckoning approached, the planet's leaders gathered with Admiral Reyes to discuss the final steps. "You've trained our soldiers well," said Zara 7's supreme leader, Ariane. "But the time for training is over. Our people are ready. We stand with you, Admiral, but we must understand the stakes. What exactly are we walking into?" Admiral Reyes looked at him, her expression hard but resolute. "We're walking into the heart of the Threx war machine. But we're not just going to attack a base. We're going to cripple their ability to fight. The destruction of the stronghold will send a clear message to the Threx and anyone else who might want to challenge humanity's place in the galaxy. But it's not without risk. This mission could escalate the conflict. The Threx may retaliate, and if they do, they'll come at us with everything they have." Ariane nodded, a grim understanding in his eyes. The Threx were a formidable enemy, and even after a resounding defeat, they would not go down without a fight. Zara 7's people had never been part of a galactic war, but now they were standing on the precipice of one. It was a moment of uncertainty, but also of unity. They were in this together, and they would either emerge victorious or be swallowed up by the flames of war. As the fleet made its final approach toward the Threx stronghold, Earth's ships dropped out of warp speed, moving silently toward the enemy's position. The tension was electric. Each officer, each crew member, knew the importance of this moment. For the first time, Zara 7's ships were part of a larger fleet, moving in perfect synchronization with Earth's forces. The people of Zara 7, though inexperienced in battle, stood ready. They had been trained for this day, and now they would prove their worth. The Threx stronghold loomed ahead, a monstrous structure orbiting a barren planet. The skies above were filled with the haunting glow of its defensive shield. Earth's fleet had faced enemy forces before, but nothing of this scale. This wasn't just another skirmish. This was the final battle to decide whether the Threx would rise again or be wiped out for good. "We've got incoming," came the voice of Lieutenant Reyes from the radar deck. "Threx warships detected. They're launching from the stronghold." Admiral Reyes' eyes narrowed. It was expected, but still, the sight of so many enemy ships, massive and menacing, made her heart race. The battle was about to begin. "Prepare for combat," she commanded. "All units, deploy." The battle erupted with ferocity. Earth's ships opened fire first, their weapons tearing through the Threx fleet like a storm cutting through dark clouds. The Threx retaliated immediately, their ships firing in every direction, but they were disorganized, caught off guard by the speed and coordination of Earth's fleet. The Zara 7 ships moved alongside Earth's warships, their smaller, lighter vessels darting through the chaos, providing cover and support where needed. As the battle raged on, Admiral Reyes kept a steady hand on the wheel. This was it, the moment that could define the future of the galaxy. The destruction of the Threx stronghold was within reach, but there was still one major obstacle: the Threx flagship, a massive ship, heavily armored and brimming with firepower. It loomed at the heart of the battle. Destroying it would be a monumental task, but without it, the Threx forces would be severely crippled. "Target the flagship," Admiral Reyes ordered. "All ships, concentrate fire." The Earth fleet, along with Zara 7's forces, brought all their firepower to bear on the Threx flagship. Weapon systems overloaded as they unleashed a torrent of energy, the force of the blasts shaking the very fabric of space around them. The Threx flagship fought back with equal ferocity, but its shield was no match for the combined might of Earth and Zara 7. Minutes felt like hours. Explosions filled the void as both fleets traded blows. But slowly, the Threx flagship began to falter. Its massive engines sputtered, and its shields began to fail. And then, with one final concentrated strike from Earth's fleet, the flagship exploded in a burst of light so bright that it illuminated the space around them like a second sun. The Threx forces, without their flagship, began to retreat. The battle was won. But as Admiral Reyes surveyed the battlefield, she knew this was not the end. The Threx might have been beaten, but there were still others out there. Forces in the galaxy that saw humanity's rise as a threat. This victory, though sweet, was only a small piece of the larger war that lay ahead. "We've won the battle," Admiral Reyes said, her voice weary but resolute. "But the war is far from over." As Earth's fleet returned to Zara 7, the people of the planet looked up at the stars, knowing their world had been saved. But they also knew that the galaxy was a much more dangerous place than they had ever realized. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity was no longer a forgotten legend. It had returned, and with it, the promise of a new, united galaxy, one that would stand together against any enemy that threatened its existence.